is. View Sports Podcast listeners, man, we are so excited to break down all things Championship Sunday. The Podcast is a little bit on the road today, so thank you guys for joining us today. Jimothy, and then with me, as always, is the one and only, the great Tubby. Welcome back to the show,
What? What is up? I mean, yeah, I got on and I was like, whoa, he's sitting in a car.
I feel like I'm in the cockpit of like an airplane or something. Like I'm just the pilot here. It's pretty great. I am parked for those who might be seeing it on Facebook or maybe, out there on the YouTube world. I am not driving. Thank goodness. I am in the
Yes,
driver's seat, but
yes.
that's just because that has cooled seats.
Yeah,
It's
you too.
incredible, man.
He is not moving. Do not take it down.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we're going to jump in here real quick. It is where I'm at right now. It's 70 degrees in January, and I'm still wearing a beanie because my hair was crazy today. So this is what we're getting. But look at this new hat Tubby's repping today with his classic Mavs logo.
Yeah, we got the old school. I had to break out the hat. I've had it for a while. I haven't worn it for a bit, and I was like, let's break out the old school Mavs.
Yeah, it's pretty sick, man. The cowboy hat on the M, it's just hanging on there.
Yeah,
It's awesome, and it makes sense after the week that the NBA just had. With
dude.
I checked my app that one day, and it was just 63, 70 points, 70 some points. What are we doing, man, in the NBA
Yeah,
right now? Because these are in regulation. One of them is 70 points, and it was 148 to 140. That's literally insane.
yeah. I mean, Luca had 41 or 42 at half. I mean, he was or 41
Yeah,
at half, something like that. I'm like, he's on pace to be the second highest scorer ever. And I mean, oh darn, all he did was become the fourth highest score, ever in a single game. Darn. But yeah, no, it's weird that they're just all suddenly like the last week it's like 60 points, 60 points. Oh, a couple 70s
yeah.
dropped in there real quick.
Yeah, the 60 is already insane. A 70, and you're like, okay, I don't know what they're doing, but it is clearly it's not defense. So that's just what we're seeing.
No, it's the NBA. Defense doesn't matter anymore, and defense isn't anything anymore when it comes to basketball, really. Period.
That's true. It's true. You just don't need it. But that's the good news because everyone came to the W Sports Podcast, obviously, to hear a breakdown of the NBA. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Or actually, not today. You know, we'll postpone that to a different time. We're going to get to the really big
All right.
news. Two massive games yesterday. So we had, obviously, the AFC Championship game. Kansas City takes down Baltimore. I knew. Instant reaction. What were you thinking? I mean, we both picked Chiefs to win this game because you don't pick against the Chiefs in the playoffs. And yet, here we are. People did it again.
Yeah, I mean, instant right off the bat, you go, man. Steve Spagnuolo just knows how to call playoff defense. The thing is, the last few years, the few times they've won Super Bowl, the Chiefs have had a decent defense, nothing really special. This year's defense is really the calling card for the team, especially the way the has played most of the season, and it really showed in this game. And part of it also, I think Todd Monken, you outcoached yourself. You were the number one run offense in the NFL, and you dropped back on 82% of your plays. You ran the
Yeah.
ball 8 times with your running backs, and yeah, Lamar ran the ball 8 times, but like I'm pretty sure like 6 or 7 of those, most of those were off of scrambles, not designed runs. And so you're taking a guy whose legs are his biggest weapon, and you
Yeah.
just pretty much took that whole thing away from him, and you're going against the strongest part of that Chiefs defense, which is that secondary. You've got 2 All-Pros in that secondary, and you're like, oh, let's go ahead and just throw at him most of the game. Why not?
Yeah, it did not seem like it seemed like they just didn't have the right game plan going into it. I mean, you already mentioned it. 3 runs for Gus. Zay had 2 runs, not even a running back.
Yeah.
Running back had 2 runs, and then Justice Hill had 3. So you had 6 running back run plays for a team that was the identity. I mean, how many touchdowns did Gus Edwards have in the regular season? Do you know?
13.
13. Bingo. Exactly. You're not going to get the guy enough, and 13
Yeah.
touchdowns is nothing to sneeze at. Like that's a pretty good number, and just to see, like you said, I mean, no zone reads, nothing like that. It just felt like, man, what are we doing? This is the same old that we keep seeing. Or,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this was one of those things that they're like, you know what? They say we can't win with Lamar passing, so we're just going to show them that we can. And they didn't.
yeah, no, I'd much rather win the way we've won all season. I don't care if it takes anything away from what Lamar did or whatever. I mean, look at what you did last week. 180 yards passing, 100 some yards rushing, 2 touchdowns each. For Lamar. Why would you go away from that game plan? Yeah, the Chiefs' defense is better than the Texans, but that Chiefs' defense last week gave up 189 yards rushing to the Bills. So why wouldn't you stick with what's worked all season, what's worked last week, and almost took the Chiefs out of the playoffs? And there was what is that, 4th and 2, and you're throwing the football when all you got to do is run. One of the best runners in football, not just running backs, best runners in football, Lamar Jackson. You're going to pick that up more than likely, and you're throwing the football. It is just a bad, really game plan from Todd Monken, and a great game plan from Steve Spagnuolo, because that's what we've talked about is with Lamar is can he beat you with his arm? And the way that you do it is you get those pass rushers and you tell them, you got your lane integrity. Do not get outside that, upfield. Do not come in, don't open the holes. And it almost seemed like the Chiefs, they were able to get some pressure on him, but it was almost like, okay, we're not getting to him, so let's just hold our ground here and keep him in the pocket and make it where he has to throw the football to beat us. And they played right into it. Like I said, 82% of your offensive snaps were drop back passes.
Yeah, definitely not, I think, the way that I think even Ravens fans would have wanted it to go. I mean, they obviously wanted to win. It felt like he was overthrowing his receivers. It felt like they were out of sync. Refs had the missed tripping penalty in the end zone against Chris Jones, as he was rushing. Would have been a safety. But ball don't lie, man. Ball don't lie. That was the same drive that they almost scored the touchdown after a couple other penalties. I believe that was the same drive. And Zay Flowers didn't watch the tape with Mecole Hardman last week, not understanding how goal line ball works.
Yeah, no, then, I mean, he definitely had a rookie drive there. He has the massive catch and then goes, okay, let me spin the ball on top of your head and stand over the top of you and get
after 15 minutes down.
Yeah, after I shoved you down. And then
they might let one of those slide.
Yeah, I think the shove down they probably would have let slide. It was the let me spin the ball over the top of your head and then stand over the top of you. And yeah, had that moment, and then a few plays later he catches the ball and you're like, oh, they're going to score. And I mean, Snead made a terrific play, punching at the football. And people are like, oh, the Chiefs are the luckiest team. I'm like, no, they just know how to play championship football. And that's a championship move. It's a championship play. You saw it yourself last week in person. Your guy reaching for the end zone and fumbling right at the end zone. He knew, okay, I'm going to take a chance, and he stuck that football out there. And Snead, I mean, just a perfect punch, punched it out right before, and then then you got people football people are still like, oh, it's a terrible world. I'm like, this is the exactly opposite of what happened last week. This ball didn't go out the back of the end zone. Yeah, they recovered the ball in the end zone, and then they got in. Of all people, Matthew Berry, the fantasy football expert or whatever, he's like, when people are like, what, where should they get the ball then? Well, they shouldn't get it at the 20. They should get it at the 1 yard line. And he's like, why? Because he fumbled it at the 1 yard line. And he's like, so someone was like, okay, so by your logic, you pick it off in the end zone and you touchback. Where do you get the ball then? You get it, obviously, by your logic, you get it from where the quarterback threw the football. So if they threw it at the 50-yard line, you get it at the 50-yard line. And he's like, no, that's not the same. You're like, no, that's exactly the same.
Sounds the
same.
So,
yeah, no, I mean, it was just a great heads-up defensive play, and it was really the big game changer in that because, they score a touchdown there, and it's, we're talking something different because they probably would have the momentum. They went down and scored another, went down and scored a touchdown later or a field goal or something. And so they could have had some momentum there, but man, it was just, like I said, the Chiefs play championship football and they know those championship situations and they just, like I said, you can't count them out. They've been there. So they know how to win.
Yeah. And it felt like the game didn't go too fast for them.
Mm-hmm.
So little things added up. So even it was 1st and 5, they needed to get a stop, and they were just trying to go offsides to get an encroachment call or whatever. And
Yeah.
instead, he just hauls it through the offensive line and gets 15 yards. Just puts you in. Even if you do stop him, then you get really bad field position,
Mm-hmm.
and just makes it that much tougher. It's just one of those things like, hey man, it's like when you're trying to foul in basketball, it's like you don't got to tackle the dude, just hit
Yeah.
him. The ref knows you're going to try to do that, so here you go. It's one of those
Mm-hmm.
things that even Harbaugh could have said, hey, we're gonna get offsides on purpose here to give him 1st and 10 instead of 1st and 5 because we need to hold them. That's great. I mean, it's within the
Yeah.
rules. You can do it. It just felt like that was another one of those moments that it just got too big. And the Chiefs, I mean, they had 3 holding calls in a row, it felt like,
Mm-hmm.
still were able to find a way to win that game. And I don't think they had any other penalties outside those. I mean, they kept the field clean for the most part.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like that. Exactly. Like the Chiefs have been there. If that was opposite situation, the Chiefs ain't. Nick Bolton isn't going to go just plowing through the offensive lineman when all he has to do is step across the line and touch him.
Boop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a big part of it was Roquan. You could tell he was just frustrated, especially that second half. I mean, Travis Kelce been, they've been jawing back and forth.
Yeah.
Roquan started getting super chippy with some of the plays, after the plays, and I think it was just one of those moments where he was probably like, "Oh, I got a chance, take someone's head off," and then didn't realize, "Oh, we're gonna hit you with a 15-yard penalty because that was unnecessary. All you had to do, like I said, walk across the line, just touch him on the helmet. That's all you got to do."
Yeah, it keeps it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you brought up Travis Kelce. Let's go ahead and bring him up. I mean, now the all-time leader in postseason receptions, and I did check it because they do play a lot more games these days than they used to, but he did it in 3 fewer games than Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice doesn't have him on touchdowns. We'll say that. He's found in the end zone, which is crazy because for now. But he has, because it feels like he finds the end zone all the time. But of course, that was Jerry Rice's thing, especially early in his career, was constantly finding the end zone. Travis Kelce sets the record. How big of a deal is this actually? I mean, is it just one of those things?
Oh, no. It's a big deal. It's one of those records that you looked at and you were like, I don't know if anyone will ever touch it. Like his reception record that just career reception record. It's one of those records you go, hey, I don't know if anyone's ever touching that record. That was one of those records, playoff receptions, over 100, plus receptions. You're like, man, most people aren't going to see the playoffs enough in their career to even come close to that. And like I said, Kelce does it in 3 fewer games. And if he plays next year or even a couple more years, he has a chance to break all of those records, receiving yards and touchdowns. I mean, he's within striking of the touchdowns by, I want to say it's single digits now. It's 3 or 4. It's, super obtainable in the next couple, if he plays a couple more playoff games. And then the receiving yards is, I want to say it's somewhere around the 400 or 500. But I mean, for him, you play a couple more and say you play 3-4 games each year, it's very doable for him. So it's kind of crazy to think about that. I guess it just shows that they play in the playoffs every single year and play multiple games every single. Yeah.
And it helps. And anytime you break a record that has Jerry Rice next to it, that's the thing. Like you break a record that has Tom Brady on it, like that's a big deal. Emmitt Smith, if you're running, like if you get those numbers, then I think you do have to consider, like, hey, this was one that wasn't supposed to be broken. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
So looking at this game, people you looked at the defense absolutely played out for both these teams. They really did a good job. You look at the Chiefs, they ran the ball 24 times with Pacheco. Yeah, 24 times for 68 yards with a long of 12 yards. I mean, they didn't care if it was going to be 2.5 yards. They were going to give him the ball, keep him honest. And as a result, they were almost 50-50 as far as, plays go. And just a big difference. And they didn't score a single point in the second half. And one of the things that I thought was crazy was last time we said the Bills had to be almost perfect. They lost. The Eagles had to be perfect. They lost. And this is a game where the Chiefs were not perfect on the road in a pretty tough environment. And I just imagine if they were just 3 or 4 plays better, the Baltimore Ravens could have been in position to have won that game.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the first half, the Chiefs really just absolutely dominated that game. The second half, the Ravens came out and they made it a point of emphasis, defensive side to step things up. Offense was, as bad as the play calling was moving relatively good at points. But yeah, it just shows you that, like I said, the Chiefs, they know how to win. And all these teams that are there, yeah, and they may have won a couple playoff games, and but none of these teams that were left in the playoffs, none of these guys really have ever won a Super Bowl. So it shows that winning matters, because that experience really shows up in the playoffs. Because Patrick Mahomes, he's lost 3 games ever in the playoffs, and 2 of them were in the the AFC Championship game, and 1's in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So it shows you every single year that man is making it far in the playoffs. So he has all that experience. But I think something that I realized before this championship weekend started was, we've been harping on it for a couple of years, run the football. And the 4 teams left. What has been their calling card the last, at least some of these teams all season, but the Chiefs really, the reason why their offense is getting in such a great rhythm as it is, those last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, though they played a couple bad games, and then into the playoffs, they've really leaned on Isaiah Pacheco. All these teams have made it as far as they did because they ran the football. And because I think before the last 3 weeks of the season, the Chiefs, or I think it was 5 weeks of the season, the Chiefs were averaging 78, 80 yards a game rushing. The last 5 weeks of the season, they're averaging 115. Because they were running the football more with Isaiah Pacheco, because they knew those guys on the outside, they just don't have it. Besides Rashee Rice, besides Travis Kelce, those other guys, they just don't have that capability to be weapons, consistently. And they knew Isaiah Pacheco, you got one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Utilize that with, a guy that just runs mean and angry. And it shows. The teams that ran the ball this weekend were the teams that won. And the teams that went away from it when it's been their calling card all season lost. So I think it's something that teams really got to take a look at and go, the three of the top rushing teams in the NFL were in the playoffs, and then one of the hottest rushing teams in the NFL was, in the AFC Championship game. Running backs matter. Pay these guys, make the position actually matter again, and run the football.
Yeah, 100% right. I love that. I'm glad that, word's getting out on what the W Sports podcast has been saying this whole time. And that's you look at the team that didn't. Now the Lions, we'll get to more of that. Mm-hmm. The Ravens, had they run the ball more effectively, and maybe that was the whole game plan, it might be a different story. That was literally just, here we are now getting the whole thing about it. But we'll talk more about this. But it opened up. The Chiefs were the underdog again in the Super Bowl. So I guess they just they like the Michael Jordan aspect of Patrick Mahomes. So I took it personally. That's just what they want every single time.
Yeah, they said let's pour a little bit more fuel on the fire. We've had them underdogs every single game this playoffs. Let's pour a little more fuel on that fire real quick, and fire them up a little bit more.
Yeah. What's crazy about this game is MVS had that catch at the end. I thought for sure. It just looked like a classic drop, and I think he's regained the trust in the playoffs with Patrick Mahomes. Not for every single throw, but for a couple key throws, I think Pat's going to have it. So going forward against the 49ers, I think that's a guy to circle as a 1 or 2 catch guy, and if he breaks one of them, he could find himself in the end zone. But as a Packer fan, we've talked about the struggles of MVS, and in that moment, that was the play you had to have to go and get the Lamar Hunt Trophy and bring it back to Kansas City. Is it right to have that trust now? Because Kadarius Toney, he ain't playing anytime soon.
If last couple of games he's made the plays, so it's got to build some trust. I don't know if I would trust him a whole lot because past history does, prove that he isn't the most sure-handed guy. I thought he dropped it. He's stumbling and fumbling, falling to the ground. There's no way he's going to catch this ball.
No
and
chance.
somehow it stays and doesn't fall. I was like, wow, he actually caught the football. But
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows that Mahomes, yeah, even though he doesn't trust, I mean, don't want to say trust. Maybe us, like fans, they don't trust him. He still goes out there and goes, man, I believe in my teammates. I'm gonna throw it. If he's there, I'm gonna throw it.
Yeah.
And he did. I thought he was gonna drop it because, like I said, he's like falling down, stumbling over his feet, laying on his back. I'm like, there's no chance he's catching this. I've seen him
Yeah.
drop, ones that hit him straight in the hands. He's wide open, and
Yeah.
he catches the one where he has no body control and he's basically flat on his back and somehow catches it in his stomach.
And you're like, how on in
Yeah,
a crucial situation. But
yeah.
so there's that, and then the other thing I wanted to point out was if there's a one player who every time he touched the ball, he's going to get a yard because he's going to get hit immediately. Do you know what player I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, here's a hint. He had 3 total touches for 4 total yards in this game, all in the Chiefs. Every single time it seems like he can't break a tackle and immediately goes down.
I'm guessing Mecole Hardman.
No, CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm
Oh
telling you,
yeah.
every time that dude gets hit, he's like, I'm down. Or,
Yeah.
Pacheco's like, no, I'm going to go get 6 yards on this. It's fine. I got you.
Yeah, I have 5 guys around my ankles and I still got 10 yards out of it.
Yeah. Going into next year, what is the one thing that you think they have to do, the Baltimore Ravens, in order to win this game next year? Like, do they reposition the team? Is it get better on the receiving end? What's the one thing they got to do?
They need a true, legit number one running back for sure. I think that's one thing Lamar's never really had. He's, you had instances where you think maybe they may have found the guy, catastrophic knee injury or tears his Achilles. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins, situation. And they have to find wide receivers. I mean, you signed Odell Beckham. Everyone thought it was this big, flashy signing, all this. And he ends up with like 40 or 35 catches for 400 yards and a couple touchdowns. He made I want to say it was like 425 yards per reception this year, or $425,000 per reception this year. You have to go out there and find someone else opposite of Zay Flowers, because I think Flowers has really shown that he can be a really good wide receiver. Can he be a legit number one? I'm not sure. This is the year. I said it, for many weeks. This is the year. If you need a wide receiver, this is the year to need a wide receiver in the draft. So maybe one of these guys falls to him, late first round, early second round, whatever they do, and they're able to get him a legit number one wide receiver and get him a running back. I mean, there's a plethora of running backs out there this year, and they have, I want to say, somewhere around $48 million in cap space. I would imagine more than likely Mark Andrews may get traded this offseason because of the resurgence of Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. Yeah. And so I think there's a chance that we see him get moved. So it'll probably free up a little bit more space. Go out there and sign one of these big running backs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones.
One of those guys. Aaron Jones might be the best of that bunch right now.
Yeah, someone that can legitimately give you a legit run threat every single game outside of Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. And Mark Andrews, 2 targets, 2 catches, 15 yards. He only played 18 snaps in that game. He clearly wasn't 100% back from that ankle injury, but I think you're right. It's writing's on the wall. It probably does need to head in a different direction with Mark Andrews, which is pretty, unfortunate because he has been so good. So we're going to move on to the next game. What up, Diaz? Man, thanks for joining the show today. So we're going to move on from the Chiefs game. We're going to go into the 49ers. How in the world did that game go from incredible, Lions are going to just roll? As a Chiefs fan, we already know we're in the Super Bowl, and I saw this Lions team. I was like, bro, I'm actually scared to play this team. Like, the way they run the ball, the way they go after the win, it just seems like they were so hungry for it. And then to have Brock Purdy and this 49er team to storm back, because they do have the weapons to do that. Give me your initial thoughts on this game.
Well, I mean, you said the first half, you're like, they're just going to get blown out. The 49ers, I mean, not saying they don't have a chance or whatever, but I mean, you're down 20 to 7 halftime, 24-7 halftime, and you're like, I don't know if you can come back, because yeah, they do have the offensive weapons, but they have been a team that's proven that they down by double digits at halftime, they don't typically come back and win. And I think a big part of it was they stopped running the football. They had eight carries in the second half for 34 yards. You had 148 yards rushing in the first half, and then come out and you have 34 yards on 8 carries. Like this is the one big thing that I looked at was when they were leading in the second half in the 3-4 drives that they had, and while they're still leading in the second half, they ran the ball 5 times. In that instance, when the 49ers are trying to come back, they ran the ball 9 times. So you got outgained, outcarried by the team that's losing.
Mm-hmm.
When you should be, you got a two-headed monster. You have two guys, the first time ever, where you have two players on your team that had over 1,000+ yards and 10 touchdowns in a season, and you don't just keep feeding the ball. I understand Gibbs fumbles, the bad handoff, the miscommunication issue there, but David Montgomery was rolling. They could not really stop David Montgomery, and you go away from it and start getting a little too cute, a little too fancy. And as great as they have been is with the aggression and going for it and all that stuff, Dan Campbell kind of outplayed himself. He really he outcoached himself in instances where you probably should have took points. And I get it. I love his explanation of it at the end of in the press conference when they're like, should you have taken the field goals? And this is what's got us here all season. This, how we got here at this point. This may be the only time this may be the last chance that we had. So we're going for the win. And I love that and everything, but there's probably some times where you got to take a step back and go, man, I take a field goal there when I'm up, 14, put us back up 17. And then, we're down 3. I need a field goal, tie up the game to at least maybe be able to send it into overtime. Maybe the 49ers go down, score, and, win the game. But at least you're not feeling pressed. And then the terrible play calling at the end when you have your 3 timeouts, you're on the 1-yard line, and you hand it off. In that instance, you can't take a timeout on the offensive side, and you have to take timeout to stop the clock. And that pretty much did it there, where your hopes are on an onside kick. And what I think they said before the game, there have been 22 attempts and only 2 recovered this year. So the odds, aren't on your side there. So it was just some things where, like I said, I think he out coached himself in too many critical instances in that game.
Yeah, we can look back, hindsight is 2020 on all these decisions. I think the hardest part, let's just replay it. He gets the chance, he kicks the field goal. They, then they ended up having to go down and score a touchdown to win the game instead. Like they flip it. That man's going for 2. He's not playing for overtime. And I think that's the truth of it. But the way the game of football works is you got to think football fields here. Do I get to defend the whole end zone, or am I only defending until, say, the 40-yard line? There's a big difference here on how the offense operates, and San Francisco's offense has the weapons to get there in a blink of an eye. And your defense also at that point is gassed, especially in the second half. Yeah. It's just not there. All the momentum was gone. It was wild to see it flip that quick. The Lions were the better team. They were not the better tackling team. We'll say that.
Yeah.
But the Lions were the better team, and to see Montgomery do what he did, Gibbs, for the most part, 3 different rushing touchdowns. Laporta was great. Amon-Ra was good. The 2 drops were pretty rough. Those play calls were good. Ball was in the right spot. Drops happen. And I think that's the hard thing to, man, how do you, both times? Come on now. And maybe you get the ball, you make sure it gets to Amon-Ra, or you make sure it gets to Sam Laporta in those situations. I think that's probably a little bit different, but they drew up the right play. Coach put him in a position to win, and that's what Dan Campbell has said the whole time. You trust me, I'm going to put you in a position to win the game, and he did that despite all of this. I want to throw this out there because I am tired of all the Brock Purdy love. I am not a fan. So his final stat line was 20 for 31, 267, 8.6 yards per attempt, which is really good. A touchdown and a pick, QBR of 88. I don't know what the QBR would have been, but let me just change it to 19 of 31 for 217 yards, and two picks with 1 touchdown. No, it would have been no touchdowns with 1 pick. It's that one play where it doinks off this guy who was on the streets was not in the NFL in week 9, right? And now he's starting in the NFC Championship game, hits it off his face mask. If he picks that ball off, how much different are we talking right now? We're not praising Brock Purdy. We're saying he overthrew his receiver down the field in a crucial situation. Give any quarterback in the NFL this skill position. How much better are they going to be?
Yeah, no, I get the argument, all that. Yeah, no, because that play really was like the big momentum swing of the game, because he makes that play and then the stadium erupts because the stadium is just dead quiet. Nothing's really going on, and he probably should have actually had another interception early on in the game too. Should have had 2 before that play, and so I get it. Yeah, he hasn't played great the last few weeks, but he's also at times, he's complete, 9 yards per attempt. And so I think there is some talent there, but I get what you're saying is like, I mean, it's hard to fail whenever you have CMC, Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, Trenton Williams as your left tackle, that, anyone, I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks, I mean, would succeed in this type of situation, but there's also the instance that out of all the guys that he's had there that have had similar skill sets as Purdy's outplayed them all with the same, typically or mostly with the same guys outside of CMC.
Yeah, and it's only gotten better with CMC back there. I mean, You're right. How it's so hard to fail. He almost failed. That's what I'm saying is, let's just say he throws the 2 picks, maybe he gets a garbage touchdown, and it ends up being 31-20 or something like that. Just think of what is the one thing San Francisco would have done in this offseason. What would they have prioritized? Kirk Cousins, go get me him, right? They would have said, give me a quarterback if Brock Purdy doesn't do it. Because the truth is, Brock Purdy and the 49ers should have lost this week, and they should have lost last week. They should have lost both games, and you know what? Brock Purdy won the game. Who cares? Like, I'm so tired of this narrative that this dude is an elite quarterback.
Yeah, no, I would definitely never
put him on ESPN.
Oh, go ahead.
They said on ESPN that he had taken a step above Justin Herbert. Like, he is a better quarterback, better than Tua Tagovailoa, which maybe, I don't know, but better than Dak Prescott. I'm like, you all need to slow your roll. This man was so close to a 2 interception game with 6.8 yards per attempt, and almost lost a second game in the playoffs. It's just because of who he's got to throw the ball to.
Yeah, no, he's definitely not an elite quarterback in the NFL. He's, maybe knocking on the top 10, and that's not taking anything away from him. But if we're talking about pure skills, he's not anywhere close to what Justin Herbert or Tua, even Tua. I don't think he's even close to Tua. Maybe he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFC, maybe. But it's just, I definitely don't see that. I think he's I think he's a really good game manager. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Huh.
You do, a lot of times you do enough to win the games because, everything else around you is good enough that you don't have to be the best player out there, which, like I said, nothing wrong with that. To me, he's just a slightly better Jimmy Garoppolo. And it's not, like I said, it's not taking anything away from the guy because he's winning the games. And, maybe it's some luck and all that stuff, because really the 2 of the biggest plays in that game came out of nowhere, where you're expecting, he's about to get sacked, and all of a sudden he has a 21-yard run here, then a 21-yard run there. I'm like, who would have thought the biggest running plays in this game would have came from Brock Purdy? And that so I give him his credit for, he had chances to, make some big mistakes and still fought through that afterwards and still got wins. Like that Green Bay game, he should have had 2 interceptions really early on, and Packers dropped both of them. But as bad as he had played that first 58 minutes, that last 2 minutes, he was dead on and won in the game. And that's kind of the same thing that happened in the second half. But it was just, first half, he was terrible. second half he came out and he was like a completely different, quarterback. So I'm not saying that he doesn't belong in the NFL. Won't say that because I think he's proven himself that he's a good NFL quarterback. But yeah, the talks of him being an elite quarterback are ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm just saying, one throw away was the difference between two
Mm-hmm.
picks, no touchdowns, and 210 yards on, that many attempts. It's just so
Three
close.
picks. I
Three
mean,
picks.
if Ayuk doesn't punch that one out of Cam Sutton's arms, he
It's true.
is that close to three picks.
Yeah.
And 2 in the first half.
But so that's what I'm saying is like, I think so. All the skill positions the same. One other thing he has going for him is who his head coach is.
Mm-hmm.
Take him out of it, and let's put in Mike McCarthy, as he still is good. Right?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Right? And so everything, if you're a 49ers fan, you have got to be like, everything has gone as well as it possibly can for this Mr. Irrelevant draft pick, which hats off to him because I did not think it was going to be this effective in the NFL. It is, we need to slow the roll on the eliteness. It's just not there. The dude has everything going right for him, around him, with who his coach is, who his skill positions are, and then other teams making mistakes.
Yeah, because let's put it this way: what happens? You take him out of that situation and you put him in the situation that Jordan Love's in Green Bay this year. What is Green Bay's record and how well does Brock Purdy play? Because you're talking about the youngest wide receiver group in the NFL. You're starting running back out for a vast majority of the season. You have a rebuilt offensive line in front of you. How well is he playing that? I mean, it's a pretty similar system with Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan, but it's a step down coaching wise and weapons wise. So it makes you wonder if he would be able to be as good as he is in a system like that, because I think you put Jordan Love in that system, and can you imagine him with those weapons?
About that.
Yeah. So it goes to your point that he is a good quarterback for that system and does what he needs to do, and Shanahan can count on him most of the times to not make the mistakes. But you look at their three-game losing streak this year. He had like 7 interceptions. Most of his interceptions were in that 3-game losing streak because teams kind of started figuring out, if we drop our linebackers back, they're throwing everything over the middle, across the middle. Let's drop those linebackers back, and he's not reading it too well. And so, I definitely understand what you're saying there. That the elite talks are crazy. He's not better than Dak. He's not better than Justin Herbert. He's not better than Tua. And we're not huge on Tua, but he's definitely not, I don't think, in that upper echelon of quarterbacks. Like I said, he's on the right up around the 10, outside the 10, but
and that's in a bad crop of quarterbacks right now.
Yeah,
not the best. And you know what, Rex Ryan said this week too. He said this is the best quarterback play in the history of the NFL is what we're seeing right now. Like, what is he watching right now where he thinks this group of quarterbacks we saw this year is among the best in the entire history of the National Football League?
I mean, because I can count on guys that everyone expected to have big seasons that absolutely just struggled most of the season. I mean, there's a considerable amount. Trevor Lawrence absolutely underperformed this year. Justin Herbert absolutely underperformed. Jalen Hurts underperformed. Burrow, before he got hurt, was underperforming. Deshaun Watson underperformed. Justin Fields underperformed from what everyone expected. You got a bunch of these guys that everyone's expected huge things. Geno Smith, compared to what he did last year, completely underperformed. There's a lot of these guys that did not perform like everyone expected them to. This is nowhere. I'll take the early 2000s quarterback crop over this any day.
Yeah. We did this a little bit because this reminds me so much of the Rams when they had Goff and he was he looked terrible initially, right? Then they figured it out. It is switch quarterbacks on these teams.
Yeah.
And I think Samuel Porter is good. I'm on Raw and the running backs, it's great. But I think that's just the point. Like, the system that they have is so good with the skill positions. I'm gonna beating a dead horse here. I got to move on from this idea. But the biggest thing I think, and you already touched it, but if you're a Lions fan, my wife's dad is a Lions fan. And I loved when he texted one of his brothers who lives in Detroit. They grew up Detroit Lions fans. They said, I'm excited for next year to lose in the wild card and lose the North to the Packers. They're already saying they're already feeling Detroit's going to Detroit. I
mean,
the tough thing is like they had it even when they didn't have it, they still had the chance to get it back. And Dan Campbell, you hope that this doesn't create a short leash because in the playoffs everything magnifies. Yeah. So let's just say he gets here next year, and this is very speculative, and we're looking into the future here. But if he makes the same thing happen next time and they don't win, it's going to be hard pressed for him to continue a job there when they're like, you got to change at some point because everyone, if 29 to 30 other teams are already doing it one way and you're the one person who's not, and I think more people are going to lean towards what he is, right? Going forward on fourth down more, but we're just going to see. We're going to see what that looks like for his trajectory, and I hope he stays. He's been great for Detroit.
Yeah, no, I think the big question for the next year is going to be how well is Goff going to be with the new play caller? Because I imagine Ben Johnson's not going to be there. I would expect it's going to be either Seattle or Washington. He's going to end up at one of those two openings because they both have waited until after this game so they can really interview McDonald and Ben Johnson. So I imagine one of those two is going to end up. One's going to end up one place. The other one's probably going to end up at the other place. Yeah. So what can Jared Goff do with someone that's really kind of remade his career, in Ben Johnson? So how does the offense look next year? How's the play calling offensive wise? Is it going to be able to stay on par with what it is this year? If not, you definitely could see a regression, from this season.
I am a fan. Give Jameson Williams the ball more. 2 touchdowns in this game was huge. And I mean, he just looks like he has that potential to have some of those X factor Deebo Samuel type, scenarios built around him. So that's what I would lean towards because you have some of the other, he could be that third weapon that they really do need in the passing game. Really see it explode with a new guy. I mean, they're going to have the right pieces. So you think that's the biggest key next year?
Yeah, it's going to be that, and you have to shore. Yeah, you have to shore up that defense. That secondary is terrible. You probably should have paid more, spent more money, maybe some draft capital there. Luckily for them, they're in a situation kind of like the Ravens, where you make it to the your conference title game, and you have a lot of money next year to spend, and not a whole lot of your guys coming off the books or needing their contract extended yet. Like, I think Amon-Ra is really the only one, and I'm sure they'll probably extend Goff this year too to lower his cap number. But they have somewhere around $60 million to spend next year. Go get some secondary in the free agency draft or whatever, because those guys in the secondary aren't the answer.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts on either of those 2 games? I know it's only 2 games. That's all you're getting to talk about. We're not talking about flag football this week.
No? We ain't going to talk about no flag football?
Who are your picks, Manning or Manning?
Yeah, right?
I got Manning winning.
Yeah, one of those. I think one of the Mannings probably will win.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah. And here's my thing. On our picks in the playoffs, we're both 9-3 now. But in reality, you should be, what would that be, 11-1? You should be 11-1. I'm just saying 49ers are messing that up.
Yeah, the 49ers, hurt me a little bit, but yeah, no.
Yeah, so you're 0-2 against picking against the 49ers. So that's my question. We won't get there yet, but as we get into our Super Bowl preview episode next Monday, we're gonna see, does Tubby pick against the 49ers or not? I need you to pick the 49ers as a Chiefs fan. I need you to pick the 49ers, okay?
Yeah. Oh, I guess we'll see next week what happens.
Yeah, for sure will. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode, this breakdown. And I'm sure if you're like me, you were yelling at Tubby and myself as we were breaking down something that you didn't agree with. But we would love to know about that in the comment section. Make sure that if you have not already, that you subscribe to the show wherever you're consuming the show, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, it could be YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, comment, and share it with someone new. On YouTube, we just hit over 220 subscribers. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy those videos. Tubby puts a lot of work into those. He's crushing it.
I'm trying. I'm trying my best.
He's getting it done. All right. Well, till then, we will see y'all next week.
See ya.